Hi Stampers, it's Angela again with Wild Violets Art. This is the third video in a series for Free as a Bird, Stepping It Up. So just as a reminder, we started with this card, super simple but still sweet. Then we layered a little bit, added a little bit of color to the birds that are the best of friends. And this time we're going to add a little bit more color. I'm going to show you some techniques that will just make your card pop a little bit more. So again, we're starting with the same basic colors, the Night of Navy cardstock. We need a couple of scraps. This one's a 1/2 inch by about 4 inches long. This is just a scrap that we'll use for the birds. Once again, we have the 1.5 inch Night of Navy. We have a piece of Whisper White that is 3.5 by 4 3/4. Then we have the Cajun Craze cardstock, which is 3 3/4 by 5, and then another piece of Whisper White, which is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then we have the Night of Navy card base, which again is the half of an 8.5 by 11, which is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. We're also using the same stamp pads, Cajun Craze, Balmy Blue, which you don't have to, it's just an option, and then Night of Navy. We're also going to be using some Stampin' Dimensionals again, like we did in the number 2. Same stamp set as before. You're going to need scissors, bone folder, or your fingernail, whichever you want to do, your glue. And then we're adding another stamp, which is part of the Free as a Bird, and it's going to be the little cherry blossom. Then we're also going to add a little bit of embellishments to an envelope. So this is one of their beautiful envelopes that Stampin' Up! Sells. It matches the Whisper White or the Very Vanilla, and they just have gorgeous softness, and so it really takes the ink very well, and it ends up making for a beautiful card. So we'll start with the base again, just like we did before. Going to ink it up. So you're going to ink up your stamp. Again, I want the 2 birds to be in the middle, lining up my paper, making sure that I have it in the right place. I'm going to move it up just a smidge than I did before so that it has more room for the verse and the flower down below. Again, I need the 2 little birds in the middle, again for the little square punch, and so we have that again. And it looks like I did another smudge. There we go. So again, you're going to punch out your little birds. Making sure that they're centered. And this time, I'm going to wow up a little bit the inside of my card, and I'm going to punch out this cute little bird that's all by itself. What I did on this card is not only did we layer up a little bit more, we added the blossom, we popped up the verse, but I also added a little sheet of white cardstock on the inside. I took the little extra bird and I colored that one also, just to kind of give a little extra to the inside of your card. And of course, I signed the back. So once again, I'm just going to get the right side of the little square, color up this little bird. And I'm just gonna continue to use the color that's already part of the line work. It bleeds a little bit, but it actually works to my purpose. If you're trying to watercolor with a completely different color, then you're going to want to use one of the stamp pads that are intended just for watercolors so that your line work doesn't bleed. Again, I'm going to use the Cajun Craze for just a little pop of color in the middle of the breast. I know these look like robins, but they're actually the Southern California bluebird. So, sweet little birds. Okay. Now on this, you're going to layer again like we did before, and I'm going to just pop it on the front. For those of you that feel like, okay, I'm seeing this again, I don't really want to, just go ahead and feel free to fast forward to where you want to be. As a reminder, I'm going to be popping this up a little bit because I want it to have a 3D effect. And the 3D effect just kind of adds a little bit more wow. It'll still go through the mail, no extra postage. It's when you add some heavier embellishments that sometimes it starts asking for more money to process it. So I'm lining it up again in the middle. I want it to match the branches as much as possible. That's a great little start. Then instead of doing it just directly on the navy, I'm going to put it on the Cajun Craze. Making sure all the edges are the same. Again, this kind of glue makes it really easy to make sure that you have a chance to wiggle it around and get it where you want it to be. And then I'm going to layer again on the Whisper White. And then I forgot to get my card base ready. And now I can place it on my card. You can see how quickly these cards just pop together. Super simple, yet really sweet. You can add any sort of sentiment that you want. You don't have to necessarily use the sentiment that comes with the set. So we're going to add the sentiment to a little piece of 1/2 inch of the Whisper White. And again, you might want to just practice lining it up so you can kind of make sure you've got it. It's a small piece. Nice thing about these little scraps that I save, they just tend to come in handy. And there we go. We're also going to, while we have the stamp out, there's a little scrap that I needed. For the blossom. And I'm going to just have the blossom here so that I can add it to the verse right there. So again, when you're watercoloring, and while I got this out, I'm going to watercolor this other little bird. I'm going to just go around the edges. Anywhere where there's the dark shadowing, you can add a little color. And then where the petals bend over, you can assume that it's going to be a little darker underneath. Just darken the center a little bit. And it's just this, all this darkening is just from the lines bleeding. So I'm not having to do anything special with my other stamp pads. Just adding a little bit of touch of color here and there. I've got this really pretty blossom. So you're going to fussy cut or just cut around the edges. I'm going to color this one because I've already cut it, just to save a little bit of time. And even though I've stamped this a while back, it still bleeds a little bit, so it allows me to color it up. Just add a little subtle color. And this little verse that I have here that I'm going to place, I want one end to just have this little bit of a flag look. I know there's punches for that. I don't have it just yet. So I typically just try to eyeball about halfway. And then I end up with a nice little flag. And the blossom can just be glued right on to that, or you can actually add some dimensionals to give it a little bit more pop. So for now, I'm just going to line these up. Do about 4 of them, just so that it stabilizes it. I recommend that you have like a little wipe close by, because if you ever touch these, you can get a lot of your ink on things that you don't necessarily want to. So I'm going to let this hang clear over here on the edge, because once I put the blossom on there, I want the blossom to hang over the colors. It kind of just gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional look. So as you can see, I'm letting it overlap over the Cajun Craze. And then you've got this cute little three-dimensional card. It's super sweet. I'll add some color to the rest of this robin. On the inside, I'll add a piece of white cardstock, and then we'll have a completed sweet little card that looks just like this. Now for the envelope real quick, just wanted to show you that it's super easy to spice up your, and I'm just randomly going back and forth, and I'm making sure that I stamp off the edge, because when you stamp off the edge, then it looks like it was intended and it looks like a designer envelope. Now to get those last little edges on the inside, I go ahead and just close up the envelope, and I'm gonna stamp in those areas. And then I'm gonna do one more right on the front where you put your address. So thank you again for joining me. This was the third of the series of 3 Step It Up cards. So we did this final one and started with the really elementary card going all the way up. So don't be discouraged that you've never done it. You'll find that it's super easy once you've had a chance to stamp. So again, thank you for joining me.